Well, hello and welcome to my world. This is Talk Leadership with Cedrick. Everybody needs a little TLC. I am Cedrick LaFleur, your host, and I'm so excited to be back with you this evening. Talk Leadership with Cedrick is where we focus on leadership and personal growth with business leaders, educators, and local thought leaders. Our goal is to introduce our audience to leaders who are making an impact with innovative ideas. Our guiding leadership principle is the law of contribution, which says growing yourself enables you to grow others. See, you can't give what you don't have. So first, you must grow yourself in order to grow others. Now, we believe that outstanding leaders like yourself will help us to grow others. So tonight, folks, we have three dynamic leaders with us. And every night I like to do a proper introduction of my guests. So allow me to do a proper introduction of our guests, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So first we have Mr. Jeff Willie, my good friend. He is the CEO of Jeff Willie Leadership and Executive Director with the John Maxwell team. He is a certified executive leadership coach and consultant. Jeff is highly sought after executive coach and mentor. Since 2003, Professor Jeff has been an associate professor at the University of Phoenix in Dallas, where he facilitates leadership, communication, employment law, and humanities courses. Prior to these accomplishments, Jeff served in the United States Air Force. Off we go into the wild blue yonder, y'all, for 26 years in key combat security leadership roles. Jeff has 3 associate degrees, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, worked toward his doctorate degree. The brother is loaded from an academic standpoint. He's born and raised on a farm in DeBerry, Texas. Jeff is married to his high school sweetheart, Pat, for over 44 years. See, tonight, with all the leaders, you're going to see consistency and longevity, and intentionality in them. So he's been married to Pat for 44 years. They have 2 daughters, Dr. Katrina Willie Musama, who's a pediatrician, and Ursula Willie, who's an attorney, and they have 2 beautiful grandchildren. So welcome, Jeff, to the show.
Thank you, Cedrick. Good to be here.
Awesome. So next we have Miss Janice Lemke Dombi.
Perfect.
All right. There we go. Colonel Dombi is retired from the United States Army. She served 33 years. Remember, I said consistency, longevity, and intentionality tonight, folks. 33 years as an enlisted soldier and a commissioned officer in the United States Army. She was the first woman to command a division, an organization with over 2,800 people in the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Janice is also the co-owner of J. Dombi Consulting, a leadership development company specializing in helping leaders transition from technical expertise to supervisor. Janice is an Academy Fellow with the Society of American Military Engineers and has 4 Masters of Art degrees, folks. Look at that. Consistency, longevity, and intentionality. She volunteers in several leadership positions with her church and community. She also enjoys teaching U.S. history at independent living facilities. Janice and her husband, Joe, live in Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, where they enjoy golfing and traveling in their spare time. With all those degrees, I don't know if she has time to travel. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Next, we have Major Lisa Bass. She's retired. She served in the United States Army for 20 years. There goes those same words: consistency, longevity, and intentionality, folks, as an enlisted person as well as an officer. She began her career as a 30-year-old private in the Judge Advocate Corps as a high school dropout and single parent of 3 children. talking about consistency and overcoming. Wow, beautiful story. During her service, she obtained a bachelor's degree in government and a master's degree in public policy and administration. She was selected and attended officer candidate school and was commissioned as an engineer. As a grandmother, she attended airborne school. Wow. And went on to become the first female commander in the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team. She retired out of Fort Hood, Texas, as the Chief of Troop Construction. Lisa resides in Dallas, Texas, with her husband, Jerry Bass. Together, they have 6 children, 15 grandchildren that holds her heart. And Lisa enjoys photography, horseback riding on her horse in her spare time. Well, awesome, and welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you guys here tonight, and I'll tell you what, our audience members, this subject tonight is one that is extremely important. It's extremely critical that everyone pay attention here tonight and figure out by the end of the show, how can you help? How can you help make a difference to stop sexual assault overall, but specifically sexual assault in the military? And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So let me just dive right in. And I'm going to start with Janice, and I'll go to Lisa and then Jeff. So tell our listeners about your leadership journey and how did you get to where you are today? Now, I know I read your bio, but our audience really likes to hear from you directly.
I grew up in Yorktown Heights, New York. I was one of 5 kids. Never thought I'd be able to go to college, and found out around when I was in 11th grade. My mother told me to study hard so I could get into a college. And I went to school, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I didn't get any of the classes that I wanted. And so I just could say, is this guy in an Army uniform saying, try ROTC. So I figured I'd try it for a semester. And that led to trying something else, which was Army basic training. It was the early days of the WACs, the Women Army Corps, had just gone away. And so I was in a unit that had 50 women, 200 men. And at the end of that, I was the honor graduate. And when I graduated from basic training, gave a speech, and I thought maybe the Army is something I'd be interested in. So I didn't really have a plan. I never wanted to be in the Army. But I think, as Cedric said, consistency is important. But I think even more important than that is blooming wherever you're planted. You may not know what your next job's going to be. In the military, we move a lot, but I always tried to do the best I could and be consistent and help grow others wherever I was, whether I was in a leadership position by my duty title or just because of who I was. I truly believe that being a leader is who you are, and not necessarily what it says on the piece of paper about what your job is. And so I didn't know I would make the military a career. I said I would stay in as long as I was having fun. And the Army kept giving me more and more exciting positions. I never thought that I would teach history at West Point, at the U.S. Military Academy. I was an engineer in the Army, but they wanted to show the cadets that engineers need to study history too. So I had this opportunity I never thought would happen. I went to command in Korea. I had about part of a $10 billion program. I had about $3 billion in design and construction. Never imagined I would ever be doing that in my life. And so be open to possibilities, but just try to do the best that you can and help other people develop. When you're given a greater position, more responsibility, try to help other people along the way. And that's kind of how I looked at it.
Awesome. And Mr. Bass?
Well, my journey was quite different. I wanted to join the Army, and it took me 3 times. The first time, 2 times, I was told no. One, because I didn't have a high school education, and two, I was a single parent with 3 kids. So, the Army doesn't want you without that spouse around with kids. So the third time, I actually started a pilot program at Auburn University in Montgomery, and the study was if high school dropouts could still achieve a college degree. And so when I was taking those, I jumped on the pilot program. When I was taking those classes, I met some guys, and they were always talking about the Army and their adventures in the Army. And it sounded so excited. And, it was just like, I really wanted to join the Army. And they were like, look, go back, try it again. The needs of the Army changes. And so you never know. So I did. I went back, and sure enough, I got in. And so I remember being at my first duty station. I was at JAG, so I worked for a trial defense service, all these attorneys. And they said, how did you get in as a single parent with 3 kids? I said, God opened the garage door and we all went running through. And so, and how that ties into leadership is leadership about yourself. You got to be able to lead yourself first. And that's, continuing. So you may not have things in the right timing, but perseverance will carry you through if you stay focused on your mission. So my journey was quite different from Janice's. I came out, enlisted for 7 years, and then became an officer going through officer candidate school. But the first time I applied for officer candidate school, they told me no. They told me I was too old. And so I ended up doing a permanent change station to Germany from Fort Hood, Texas, when I was enlisted. And when I seen on a bulletin board, they were taking OCS packets again, officer candidate school. And so I looked up in the regulation. You always go to the regulation. Don't let just somebody tell you something. And the regulation said I could apply 1 more year, that I wasn't too old. And so I photocopied my packet, went to my battalion commander, who did not know me. I was in processing. I'm like, hey, I had a general sign off on my packet at Fort Hood. So immediately it was like, okay. And I submitted the packet, and I was selected that time. So you never give up, So my journey's been not so much open opportunities as identifying what I wanted and continue to go for it.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Dr. Willie?
Well, absolutely. A common theme here is a very common theme. And I like to start it out this way, and I'm going to keep it very short in regards to, I grew up in rural East Texas in a home with a father that couldn't read and write, signed my birth certificate with the letter X, and because he could not write. And I discovered that X on my birth certificate at the age of 19 when I decided to enlist in the Air Force coming out of Carthage High School in Panola County. And the reason I joined the Air Force because I was hungry with wife and child. And of course, you need to put food on the table. And very fortunate, I had an older brother that was already in the Air Force. He enlisted in 1965. So here it is 12 years later. I'm seeking his advice about joining the Air Force because he was a model out there for us. And he joined it just to get away from the woods as well. And so when I discovered that X on my birth certificate, that was a paradigm shift that propelled me, because with those 12 kids, only 6 of us graduated high school. And out of the 6 boys, only 2 of us graduated high school. My older brother that entered the Air Force and myself. So getting out of high school was the challenge because education was not part of our culture. And so when I enlisted into the Air Force, as a procrastination, going through my skill set, my profession as a security police, and mentoring, I've always had this mindset of mentoring and coaching and teaching. So I'm always being a positive role model, try to be a positive role model. And so while I'm around other people that are pursuing education, and I am not, but I'm asking myself, why am I not pursuing an education? So late on in my career, once I made E7, which was a master sergeant for the Air Force, and my wife and I made a commitment. But we started before that. I made a decision, and then I took action. And the decision I made was when my wife and I got stationed at Dyes Air Force Base in 1986. She had an associate's degree in nursing. We had 2 small kids. She made a commitment at that moment. We made an educational family commitment that she's going to go to Hardin-Simmons, and she got a bachelor's and master's in nursing. But the decision that really propelled that was that X on my birth certificate. I said, I cannot have illiteracy no more connected to my DNA. And because of the impact that it had on my family, on my siblings growing up, I said no more. And so psychologically, I've already started the movement part that said education is going to be part of my legacy, everything that comes out of my family. And that's what Lisa said, leading yourself. You cannot give what you said, you cannot give what you do not have. I cannot be telling people about going to school and educate themselves if I'm not willing to invest in myself and be a model for my family. So I chose to be a model for my family because my daughters need to see that their parents are putting in the effort, staying up late and put in the effort. And so that becomes the culture for them, the mindset for them by watching their parents. It's not what we say, it's what they see us do. And so their choices of going to college after high school, it was not a choice. It was just which one you're going to go, where you're going to go. It's not a choice of going or not going because it's not about what we said, it's about what we did. And that was the message that we sent through our action. And so started a platform and on active duty, got to put in some major leadership roles as a E7 very early in my career, 9 years, 10 years, I'm selected for E7. And then they eventually left the security police career field and then put on the diamond as a first sergeant and wore that diamond for over 10 years of wearing that diamond in the Air Force, and of course, and being in that decision making, helping commanders and grooming commanders and making those decisions, part of that, being an advisor to the commanders across my career. But when I left the military in 2002, of course, I had the master's degree and graduate certificates and several associates and bachelor's degree and all the above, and daughters in medical school, one getting ready to go to law school. I never thought I saw myself being able to teach college because I couldn't spell college. I thought it started with K. I didn't know what that looked like. Obviously, coming out of high school, but I never saw myself in this role as an educator. But I said that a long time ago, that literacy is going to be part of my legacy. And I never thought I would be an educator and promoting education, and everything I do now is promoting education because I know it changes lives. And you and I both know it really transitions people's lives. You can do a lot of great things without it, but there's a lot of more doors that fly open because of that. And I know some people that are billionaires that are non-degree, and that's not an issue. But the fact is, for me and my family, for me and my household, that's going to be my legacy for my children and my grandchildren, because I want to be able to add value to me so I can add value to others. Always become a river, not a reservoir.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Well, let's dive into the book, and we're going to talk about, folks, sexual assault prevention and recovery strategies. And I guess the title of the book is really "In Her Boots," right?
In Her Boots, Volume 1.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to put that up on the screen as well. But so Lisa, In Her Boots, tell us what is the book about, and why you guys decide to collaborate on this particular topic.
Well, the book is aimed at reducing the learning curve, bottom line. So we know statistically that sexual assaults are higher rate amongst the ages of 17 to 24. And so with that said, after 25 and beyond, we learn from those school of hard knocks. So we felt like if we could reduce that learning curve by educating, empowering, and inspiring those young female service members about coming up through the ranks in sexual assault prevention, then we could maybe carve out some of this with the statistics and what's going on. So we started this in Iraq in 2010 and 11. And so it was a team of senior female and male military leaders that have came together, and we were known as Task Force SASA, Sisterhood Against Sexual Assault. We ended up putting on Find Your Voice conferences, and we traveled the battlefield. In addition to, like with me and Janice, our engineer duties, this is something we were doing on the side to take initiative to try to, combat this. So, we traveled the battlefield and then talking to those females about finding their voice and giving them some strategies and learning from us that we had already been there in her boots, right? And so after we came back from Iraq, we all went our separate ways and then and retired. So, but I've always held on to Task Force SASA. I always believed that we needed prevention before reaction, and that's our motto. And so about a year ago, I said, hey, the statistics are not getting any better. The next generation that came behind us, they're not resolving it. So we stepped back in, came back together, and invited a couple of people like Jeff, Willie, and Beverly that we met along the way to supply chapters, put chapters in that they felt like, as senior leaders, that they could impart that information to a younger junior female service member. And so that's how it all came up. We were actually completing the book in December when Fort Hood had broke open with their news with all the sexual assault. So the timings, you know, as ugly as it is, we were ready for that timing on, hey, we're here to come back, because there's been no change in 10 years. So coming back at this hard, because we know the strategies we put out there that we put in the book. So you could literally just read the book and gain some knowledge that can help to reduce this learning curve and combat sexual assault.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you guys did decide to do this. So we are actually going to give away our first book. So I wanted to, being first is always important. Now, my background is, even though I spent 7.5 years in the United States Air Force, my background is clinical science and sales. So being first is important. And Ray Lee was the first one to comment. He's on LinkedIn, and he put a comment out there, and it said, "Thank you for the leadership and the lessons." So Ray Lee, you are going to be the winner of this first book, In Her Boots, Volume 1, Sexual Assault Prevention and Recovery Strategies. Ray, just send me your address, and I will make sure that you get this book. I'm going to write your name on it so that I don't give it away to somebody else in my quest to give things away. All right. So, Janice, as you were coming up through the ranks, you experienced sexual assault. And, this question is, and it's, well, how did you deal with it, and how did you come through it?
Well, so a little background, what happened to me, as I said, I went to basic training. And when I finished basic training, having been the honor graduate, I was on top of the world. I was so confident. I was confident going into basic training. I was even more confident coming out. And so I was really not aware of my situation, not aware of my surroundings. And I was on duty one night. I was told I had duty, charge of quarters duty. And I said, it's not my chance. It's not my turn. And they says, oh, so-and-so doesn't have to have it because something happened, fraternization with the sergeant that's on duty. And in basic training, fraternization goes all the way from flirting to sexual intercourse. So I don't know what happened to this lady, but she no longer had to have duty with the sergeant. So I was at my desk. It's an all-night duty. I'm sitting at my desk. The sergeant comes out of his office, calls me. I stand up, and he comes over and he grabs me, and he starts carrying me to the back room and trying to kiss me. And so I fought, and I got away from him, and he came back again, and I told him to leave me alone. And he backed off and went to his office. And I felt terrible. But I said to myself, if this woman already reported him and nothing happened, what's going to happen with me reporting it? So I never reported it. And I just said, I don't want to get held up going back to college. I'm starting school in the fall. I don't want to be delayed with any of this stuff. So I never told anybody. And then, maybe a month later, I'm thinking that I should have said something, because maybe by finding my voice and having the confidence to speak up, I could have helped that next person who didn't find her voice and perhaps didn't get away. And so I've just regretted that, throughout, and I really never talked about it. But it was something that was inside that I knew that I had to make a difference. And when we put this together with Lisa, starting this up in Iraq, I knew what it was like to not find my voice and to not have the confidence. And we don't teach. I mean, there are so many times when sexual assaults are more prevalent in the military. It's a skill we can teach. And transitioning from basic training to another training or to another base, I mean, those are really high priority places or high occurrences of sexual assault. That was something I never learned. So I wanted to use my experience from being in her boots to help other women know to really have your radar up when or your antenna up when you're in a situation like I was.
Sure. Let me ask you a follow-up question on that. So, because you said, hey, you never you felt I guess down a little bit because you didn't find your voice at that time. So, help our audience understand, how does that feel to know that you don't have you're not able to speak what you want to what you really want to speak, and you're holding it in? How much of a burden was that on you to hold all of that in?
I don't know that it was a burden to hold it in as much as it was, I really felt disappointed in myself.
Sure.
More disappointment than a burden, because I see myself as a very confident person. And I think women in the military, well, 98% of us will see ourselves as very confident. But I didn't know at the time that confidence was situational.
Sure.
That I can be confident in one area, but not in another, not in an area that has to do with sexuality. We never talked about sex at home. It wasn't something my family even acknowledged. They don't talk about it in the military. It's more like everybody's a guy, you know, and the women just want to fit in and be one of the guys. So sexuality is not discussed. So I just really felt disappointed that I was so weak that I wouldn't stand up and report what happened to me.
Sure. Yeah. I know that has to be something that weighs on you a little bit. So, Jeff, help us understand, and sexual assault can happen to men, but it's more prevalent, obviously, with women. But in your journeys, did you have to handle sexual assault cases in your time in the military, and how did you guys handle it?
Well, obviously, as a first sergeant, well, let me give you my mantra in my heart, where I come from. Raised by my father, he always had this sense of protection of the lesser person, of the weaker vessel. Somehow I got that. That was a nurturing aspect that I received from my father. Always protect people that you consider not less than you are, but weaker than you are, and that are vulnerable. And that became part of my psyche, is that always looking out for people that are vulnerable and people that are weaker. Children, I have this thing about kids. I just protect kids. You mess with one of my kids, I change. Something happens. I don't know what happens inside me. I can't control it, but it's just that's. And I watched my father was very calm in how he loved on people in spite of. He loved on people. So me going into the first sergeant business was something progressively natural for me to do, to take care of people. And the situation, I won't even mention the base in this situation, but you kind of know where I was stationed. But this gentleman, friends, allowed, he's going TDY, and he's entrusted his friend to take care of his family while he's TDY, small child and spouse. Okay, look after them. If they need anything, they can call you. They can call your wife, and then you can come and take care of some things. And once something happened where he had to go and help the spouse in the absence of a husband, and she had a small child, and she was there as well with a small child, and they trusted each other. That's just the way nature who we are. We take care of each other. Mm-hmm. And well, he got a little carried away when he showed up that day and created some major problems. He obviously assaulted the spouse, and then also after he assaulted the spouse, he molested the child, the little girl. Oh yeah, if that's part of me right now, I probably want to stop talking because my protection comes out. That's just part of who I am. But I end up escorting that young man to Fort Leavenworth, and I never forget that trip. in uniform, handcuffs all the way, in civilian aircrafts, and then him getting to Fort Leavenworth as well. And it's very emotional, very tragic for the organization that we were in, because and the fact is that when he got back, the gentleman got called back from his TDY when he found out what happened to his daughter and his wife. That created a ripple effect, because someone had to go back out and replace him. So it was a domino effect because of that gentleman. He was trusted to take care, look after. That's what we do. We family to we in base housing, and it was in base housing.
Sure.
And you just take care of your neighbor, and that's just what we always did. And that was very, very emotional for me, because I didn't know that the young man had that in him, and you don't know that people that they have it in them. But now I've worked with him in that organization. I was his first sergeant, and now I'm sitting on a plane next to him. And yes, I'm always cordial, always having a conversation. You never ask why, you never get into that, but you just have a conversation, and you wish him the best. And the sad part about that, I won't get into the other story that goes after that, because once you get into that environment and you're considered, have that label on you coming into the environment, you're not part of the in group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not part of the in group. I just label it like that. And when you're not part of the in group, it's things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. They handle it themselves. I would tell you though, I would hope that the military start asking why.
Yeah.
Because then you get to go deeper and understand the psychology of a human being and their mind, and then you can help impact change on other people.
Right.
Right. So
Yes.
let's go to our next question here, and
Okay.
Lisa and Janice. And so I was watching a news report, and Representative Jackie Spire from California stated that there is 20,000 service members assaulted, 5,000 were reported, 500 go to court, and 250 are convicted. And it was amazing that I saw this right after I saw you guys on Jeff's live show. And so I actually rewound the TV several times and wrote this down, because I knew that I was going to invite you guys to come on the show. And so why do you believe that all of these cases still happen, yet so few are ever brought to court and convicted?
Okay, Janice, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll start this off, and you can close it out for me. So we do talk about this in the Inner Boots book, right? Especially in the Don't Suffer in Silence, and going from victim to survivor to a thriver. So what happens, and we understand it as a commander, being a commander and having to process cases. And then I worked in the JAG Corps, so I understood how this goes on into the military court system. So a lot of times women, they won't report. If they do report, the evidence is not collected properly. And that's what we address. We have a SANE sexual assault nurse examiner that's part of our team. And so discussing on, regardless if you want to report or not report, on how to go and get help for yourself. Because in that state of shock, you're not going to want to report. You don't know what you want to do, right? And so, but if you can go, and it almost becomes a battle drill, and we teach that in the book, that you already know where to go, and you understand that environment to go be examined for collection is not a cold, sterile environment, that it is a safety place for anyone sexually assaulted. But it allows the doctors, the medical profession, to collect that evidence and store it away, because I think they got like 5 years that they can bring a case forward. So with that, why doesn't it get all the way? How many convictions? It is hard for a commander to decipher between a he said and she said. When you get the he said and she said, and there's other situations going on, somebody crossed the line because somebody didn't communicate a boundary strong enough, that's when things get convoluted. And in the court systems, you've got to have your evidence right, all collected, to make that case.
Yeah.
So we believe, you know, with the book, as far as prevention and the recovery strategies, we identify what someone that becomes a victim, what they need to do, and develop a battle drill to go with that. So it makes it easier for the JAG Corps to go ahead and prosecute. But if they don't, it's everything's a process, and it's step by step, and it's very, very clear, right? I'll let Janice finish up on this. I see a comment that says scared of retaliation, and I think I want to address that in one of your other questions.
Okay.
Thanks, T.M. Williams.
Well, what I find even more disturbing of that whole statistic, and I quote Jackie Spire in our book. What I find so disturbing is that there were 20,500. When each year the Department of Defense submits a report to Congress telling how many sexual assaults were in the past year, and this is the high since Department of Defense has been reporting, has been 34,000 sexual assaults. And now last year it was down to 20,500. That's the number why is that still happening? And the Congresswoman's been working on this for 10 years, and she said they put $1 billion into this. Why are those numbers so high?
Right.
And I feel those numbers are so high is because we do nothing to change how we're training and how we're talking about sexual assault in the military. We've gone from having once a year classes on this is what sexual assault is, sexual harassment, this is how to report it, to in some places, you know, commanders know we've got to do more. So they have that same class 4 times a year. And it's a stack of 150 PowerPoint slides. Okay, I just pulled that number out, but it's probably not too far. So it's a stack of PowerPoint slides that some 25-year-old near peer is flipping through, has no knowledge beyond what's printed on that slide. And nobody's learning anything. Nobody is learning the life skills required to take them from what they're not learning before they come in the military, because this isn't a military-only problem. Sexual assaults at colleges are about 25%, 20 to 25%. It's a United States problem. And the same segment of society that's going to college is coming into the military, and they're not bringing in those life skills to learn how to treat people with dignity and respect. And until we change that narrative and people say, oh, that's what's going on, that's what's happening. And so we don't have all these, he didn't say, she didn't say, and then a commander's supposed to be figuring out what happened behind closed doors. That's why In Her Boots is so important, because it's not just flipping PowerPoint slides. We do lots of awareness training in the military, sexual assault awareness training. We're beyond aware. We're aware. We need sexual assault prevention fix training. And that is roll up sleeves, get out your stubby pencil, do some work in the workbook, identify what's going on in your life and what are skills you can learn to help when you're not being treated with dignity and respect. And until that happens, these numbers are going to be high.
And so I'll close that out and then kind of hone in on the retaliation. So when Janice was talking about the workbook, so that workbook goes with the In Her Boots book, right? And it means getting down to business. But what we also have is those senior female military leaders involved, right? And we have this program that meets monthly. And when you have senior female military leaders talking to those junior female service members, now if things are coming up within the unit, that female leader can address that. If there's retaliation going on or just not even reporting, right? then we can cover down on that, right? We can mitigate that from that happening, because now they have somebody and they know they have Sharp to go to, or EO, or whoever. But there's just something different when a female military leader is standing there talking to not just a leader in uniform, but now just another woman wearing the boots, right? And they can relate that she's been in her boots, and they feel open enough and confident enough to talk to her. But with that too, if you have this in place on active duty, because that's where it starts to alleviate this problem with the VA. So if you have this program and it's going on month to month, that right there sends a message to a predator that, hey, she might not have gone to Sharp or the commander, but she might say something in that group they're meeting in every month.
Sure.
See, and so right there, that's a deterrent. And if retaliation's going on, then those senior female military leaders will be able to mentor and address that to reduce that.
Wow. Well, it's always interesting it's always interesting to hear from audience members, and we have a lot of former military people who are listening, especially over at Lake Charles Memorial Hospital. There's like 33 of them that are tuned in tonight listening, and Laura is commenting from them, and for those former military people. So, Jeff, I say this is an everybody issue, and it's an everybody in the military issue, meaning that it takes everybody's cooperation and doing their part to really call this out, get this out in the open to help make change, right? So talk to the men in the military and give them 2 or 3 things that they can do starting today to make an impact and on this situation in the military.
Janice and Lisa, their statements was just so right on, and so much packed with so much what I call practical daily information. And one of the things that I want to start out with is that I want the guy to look himself in the mirror and look back at him and think that his mother is standing behind him. Realizing that, are you valuing the person in the mirror, and are you yourself? And then are you valuing the mother that's standing behind you, happens to be a female? Are you valuing you, and are you valuing her? I am so grateful for the opportunity to be facilitating right now to change your world about values, because Janice said this is not a military issue. It's just it's pronounced and you hear about it, but it's on college campuses, it's on high school campuses, and businesses across the United States generally. Why? Because we're not valuing ourselves, and we're not valuing and treating others with dignity and respect. And I think it starts with the person in the mirror. Are you valuing yourself? And then your mother is standing behind you. I spoke at a group a couple of days ago. I think Janice and Lisa was on there as well. Is that I see this person as my mother, my sister, and right now my wife. Right now I'm seeing them as not only my daughters, but I'm seeing them as my granddaughters because of my age. And that's a part of me that value that, and to protect them and make sure no one is violating them. And once you start valuing who you are as a person and start seeing everyone as equal to, not less than or greater than, is equal to. And one thing that came out of this value in person is, if I see Janice and Cedric and Lisa, even though I never met you, and if I see you as a 10, and that means I'm putting a number on you, a high number in a high perspective, because I'm putting a high number on myself. And I need to put a high number on the people that I come in contact with. I see you as a 10, and that means that I'm valuing you, because why? I'm valuing myself. And men, you need to look yourself into the mirror. Are you valuing yourself? And the majority of the time, what I'm hearing is there's a disconnect and a dysfunction significantly in the heart, in the mind, when you have to inflict harm on someone else. You have to inflict harm on something and you got to believe. And when you do that, there's a disconnect in the heart. And what the training that we're trying to, with Janice and Lisa are talking about, that we need to tap into that. What's the reason? As you said earlier, said, don't ask him that why. Get to the root of what's causing. What are you thinking about right now? When you see some person walk down the hallway that's opposite, what are you thinking about? Let's just deal with that right now. Let's get open about that and be transparent about that and start seeing, because that young lady is trying to fit in and be part of the team. She can be part of the team in the foxhole, just can't be part of the team in the dormitory room. And that's where that's where the issues, because I got your back in the foxhole, but now I'm in the dormitory room and I don't have your back. And that's got to be a problem. So men, look yourself into the eye. And then also for leaders out there, I think Janice and Lisa talked about it. You need to start listening. And listen with an open mind, and listen with not subjectivity, but objectivity. Because when people are speaking, they are speaking from their heart. And you need to establish a culture where people can open their voice, open their mouth, and share what's going on. Because what Janice said earlier, wait a minute, if you didn't get reported and nothing happened before, and then the culture saying you can't tell, because if you tell, it's going to be retaliation. And so nothing has happened before, and that becomes the culture. And so leaders out there, you need to shift that culture that every person in your organization is equal. When it's reported, you need to open up your ear and listen to what's being said. I don't know all the legal aspect. I know Lisa is more prone to talk more about that, but you got to be able to listen so people can share their voice. And people can share their voice. And that's my focus is on that. It's got to be valuing each other. And leaders, you've got to value the people in your organization. If you're not listening, the mission, and we all are failing when that happens.
Awesome.
I'd like to add to that real quick. Sorry, Janice. It's also leadership needs to pay attention. Because I've worked with plenty of veterans, female veterans dealing with MST since I retired through the Inner Boots program. And one thing I found out with all the stories is, hey, you know what? The junior enlisted knew what was going on. So why didn't the leaders, right? Because they're not paying attention. I know when we were in Iraq, I was coming around a curve, we were walking to a building, and I seen a formation of guys in a squad marching, right? Supposed to be eyes forward. And there was a female, and she was walking over to the chapel, right? And all of a sudden, all those guys turned around and looked at her. And of course, I started yelling, "What are you looking at?" Right? Eyes forward. So but the fact that I was paying attention of what was going on. So it kind of came around like if there in Baghdad was like, you don't know when Major B's coming around the corner because she's going to say something. We know as adults what's really going on. If you pay attention, you can see those signs. And we talk about those signs in the book. But just pay attention, and you can see what's going on in your environment. Janice?
I just wanted to bring in, tagging on to a little bit what Jeff was talking about, and whether it's your daughter or your wife, how you see those victims. Actually, in the military, more men are sexually assaulted than women. The numbers are significantly higher of men being sexually assaulted. The percentage of women is higher, but the actual numbers is significantly higher with men. But men tend to, they definitely don't report it. And instead of thinking of this as a sexual assault, they think of it more as hazing or bullying. And it's definitely, by definition, sexual assault. And so another statistic associated with that, out of the Department of Defense report to Congress, 77% of the sexual assaults against men happen during duty hours. They actually are happening on duty. And these men then have this assault. They don't report it, but even more important, then they don't get the help they need to get beyond it. And whether that's counseling or seeing a specialist to help them become a survivor instead of the victim. And a lot of times you hear more about women once they get out. High number of suicides among military veterans, and a lot of those suicides are linked to sexual assault or military sexual trauma, where people were assaulted and then did not get the help to get beyond that. So it's important to recognize as leaders, we think about women a lot more. It's in the media a lot more, but actually numbers, especially in the military and on college campuses, is a very high number of men being assaulted as well.
And so is, so the book is not only for females. I mean, it's females talking to females mainly, right? To put them on guard, to stay alert and eyes wide open. But we, in the victim to survivor to thriver chapter, we actually go through those stages that you will, as a victim, you will go through. And usually people get stuck in stage 4. Now you have to get the book to figure out what those stages are. But here's the thing. We stress if it happens on active duty, get the help on active duty. You don't have to get it from the active duty personnel. There are other means like the vet centers that are out there that you can go to that are active for active duty also. It's not just for veterans. But here's the thing. If you don't get the help and you don't deal with those 5 stages of recovery, it's going to hit you at some point. You have to deal with it and you have to heal. And sometimes it means going out and talking to somebody outside of your network, right? A professional, to get that help to heal. Because if you don't, when you get off active duty, you're going to come face to face with it. Because the military is not there to distract you with mission. So we're trying to prevent that happening, that everybody, hopefully nobody becomes a victim. But in the event that you do, you can get that help, and we have strategies on the way to get that.
Okay. All right. So Lisa, in a chapter that you wrote, Don't Suffer in Silence, you recounted your story and sexual assault that happened to you, and a couple of questions I have around that. And it sounds like you didn't feel, and maybe I read it wrong, but you didn't feel that you had a safe place to report what happened.
It's not that I didn't have a safe place to report. I knew how to report just like everybody else in the military. Everybody knows how to report. With me, I was older. Clearly, I was older coming in from the get-go, more life experiences, just as a private. So now I'm a captain. It was the fact that, okay, that it's like Janice said, a near peer. It may be a young sergeant or maybe a sergeant first class, but it has no experience with sexual assault. And that's the person you're supposed to report to. And so to me, it was like, these people cannot relate to me. So I would just, like we do in the military, we suck it up and drive on. And so that's why I said, and I'll reinstate, that it is imperative that you get that help on active duty. I didn't know that. I came face to face with it and had to deal with it when I came off of active duty.
Okay. All right.
So I speak from experience with that.
Well, let me clarify. So I spent 7.5 years in the United States Air Force. Everybody doesn't know how to report that. I don't know one example of anyone ever telling me how to report sexual assault. Now, I wasn't sexually assaulted. And
then I'd ask, how long ago was that when you were in?
Well, I'm much younger than you.
Doesn't mean you were in. I went in late.
No, I was in from 1998 to 1988 to 1995.
Okay. So now they have the 150 PowerPoint slides. That's what they're teaching you. For 150 slides, they're teaching you how to report. And whether it's a restricted report or an unrestricted report, that's pretty much what they're teaching you, all the things to do after you're assaulted. Nothing of what to do before you're assaulted, but here's after you're assaulted. Here's the legal help you can get. Here's the medical help you can get. Here's who to report to. That's what those 150 slides are about.
Yeah, and that's why we stress prevention before reaction.
Sure, yeah. 150 slides, I don't think anybody's going to remember anything out of that. So, Janice, in the chapter that you wrote, reducing the learning curve, right? You wrote that service members who previously had been assaulted was 33% more likely to be assaulted again in the military. Now, that was when I read that, I was like, is that right? It means that means that they were assaulted maybe before they got in the military, and they're 33% more likely to be assaulted again once they get in the military.
Exactly. So people that are assaulted maybe as a child or as a teen and then come into the military have that 33% likelihood. If you've been assaulted in the military, you have a 33% likelihood of being assaulted again. One of the women that was on the team with us had been sexually assaulted 3 times while she was in the military. We had another sergeant major with us that she came on active duty having been sexually assaulted. When Lisa and I were in Iraq, there was a first sergeant that sexually assaulted several of the women in his medical company. And one of those women was a first lieutenant. And a lot of times you think, what? She's an officer. Why is that? Why is a first sergeant? How does that even happen? And it turns out she had been sexually assaulted prior to coming into the military. So it's a statistic. I can't, from the psychological reasons, I couldn't begin to explain properly. But I do know that's a statistic. And I think it's a statistic that needs to be shared with those people that have been sexually assaulted so that their antenna is up and they're looking around for predators, because predators can tell maybe they're not quite as confident as some other people. And those predators, it is like National Geographic. They look at the herd and they try and pick out the weakest. And then they try and get that woman away from the rest of the unit, away from her friends, her support group, her peers, and repeated sexual assaults.
And I will add on to that. And one thing the lieutenant had said was that she couldn't find her voice. And remember that when all the investigation came out. But with that too, that first sergeant, that was the only unit that would not allow their females to come to our monthly meetings. And they would see me and they would go, ma'am, we want to come, we want to be there, but our first sergeant won't let us. And I even went over and talked to him, and I did kind of have a little eerie feeling about him, but I mean, I can't step into somebody's command and tell them what to do and stuff. Right. But so when that came out about the lieutenant, that was a young officer, and her first sergeant assaulted her. So clearly she didn't have confidence because, I mean, she had the rank to even stand up to him.
Sure. Yeah. So I have 1 minute.
Okay.
So final word from each of you guys, like 20 seconds each on what you want your message to be.
Let me go ahead and say you can find us on Facebook and you just In Her Boots Program, and you can find us on Instagram under In Her Boots Program. You can go to our website at inherboots.org and you can reach out to us through there. But we do stress, hey, as long as people get some prevention strategies in place, please contact us because we're here to talk to anybody to help, to reduce that learning curve.
Yes, and the link will be in the it's shown on the screen, but it's also going to be in the comments, so you can just click on the link as well.
And I just want to follow up with what Lisa said. If you buy the book, buy 2 and make sure you share a book with someone else. Buy 2 and then share one with someone else that that might need to read this, and you guys can do a book study together.
Right. April is Sexual Assault Prevention Awareness Month in the military. Get it into some active duty people's hands. Sorry, Janice.
That's quite all right. And I would say it's even a great...
She froze.
Yes, she froze.
Tamika
Williams, you're going to get this second book. I love all the comments that you had tonight engaging with the audience. So I have your name on this book, Tamika. and I'll make sure that I get this sent out to you guys. Thank you for each of you for coming on the show. I definitely appreciate it. I'm glad we're able to get more of a message out around sexual assault in the military. Definitely hope that we can help the military get some control over this. So, folks, get the book In Her Boots: Sexual Assault Prevention and Recovery Strategies. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, as I always tell you, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and don't be on the menu. Thank you and good night.